Hello there, it's Sarah from Paper Lovely. Thanks for joining me today. I have got part 1 of my 10 cards 1 kit using the Spellbinders May 2019 card kit. So jumping here into card number 1, I've taken some of this wood grain pattern paper and trimmed that down to 4 by 5 1/4. I've used some of the double-sided tape to attach that to a panel that I've trimmed out of the cream cardstock. That measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so it will cover the entire front of my card base. Here I've grabbed one of the Project Life cards and added some foam tape to the back of that. I'm going to pop that down right in the middle here. And then I'm going to add this rose and some leaves up at the top corner. So since that is going to be overlapping that card a bit, I'm going to add a few pop dots just behind that to help keep everything even. I'll place one behind the leaves as well. And then for the portion that overlaps the card, I'm going to add some art glitter glue there. Here in the bottom corner, I'm going to add in 2 of these tickets. So I'm just overlapping those. I'll add a little bit of art glue underneath. And then since that pink one is a little bit off the edge there, I'm going to add a pop dot behind that as well. And once I've got that in place, I'm going to go ahead and curl those edges, and I'll add a little bit more glue to make sure that's down nice and tight. I'll add some glue here on the front of my card base and go ahead and place my panel down. For the inside, I've grabbed one of the phrases from the ephemera set. This reads, "Nothing beats this." And I'm going to glue that here directly on the inside of the card base. And that will complete card number 1. So here for card number 2, I'm going to start out by stamping out the bear. I'm working on some Neenah cardstock and stamping the bear with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I'm going to go ahead and trim him down, and this measures roughly 2.5 inches wide. Here I've got one of the floral pattern papers trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4, and then for my background panel I've trimmed down that black cardstock to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm just going to play around here with some of the ephemera until I get a layout that I like. So I'm going to add some double-sided tape to the back of that bear panel and place him down on top of my floral pattern paper. I did place him slightly off center, probably by about 1/4 of an inch. I just placed him over a little further towards the left so that I would have room for all of those ephemera pieces off to the side. I'll go ahead here and trim that excess off the bottom. I'm going to go ahead here and add some double-sided tape behind that floral panel and place that down on top of my black cardstock. And then I'll add some foam tape behind the ruler. And I'll add that right alongside the edge of that bear panel. Here I'm going to start laying out my ephemera again. I was really indecisive with this card for some reason. I kept pulling in the same things and then pulling them out again and putting them back in again until I finally had something that I was happy with. And I do end up finally staying with that white and gold number 1. I wanted to add in a little more green, so I decided to stamp another sentiment up towards the top. For this, I'm using some Stampin' Up! Old Olive ink. It's a really pretty green and it goes really well with that green beehive. And now I'll start to lay everything down. So I'm going to use that viewfinder. I'm going to add some pop dots behind the beehive just to try and keep everything as even as I can. And this one I stuck sort of behind the window of one of the viewfinder openings. And then that's going to help keep that number 1 popped up as well. Now at this point I decided I just needed a little more green, and I ended up peeling all of that off. Thankfully it did tear a little bit of that background pattern paper, but since I shifted the ruler over slightly, you can't tell at all. So I placed down those leaves and then put the ruler back down, and then I'm going to trim off the excess. I'll add some glue to the top of my card base and then place that panel down on top. For the inside, I'm going to use another one of the sentiments from the ephemera. This one reads, "So lucky to love you." Just added a little bit of that double-sided tape behind there, and then I'll place that directly on the inside of my card base. I'm going to grab my ruler here to make sure I get that nice and centered. And then here I'll also grab another one that just has an XXX, add some glue there, and then place that sort of at an angle so it's ready to go. All you have to do is sign your name underneath. And that will complete card number 2. So here for card number 3, I've trimmed down some of that copper foil paper to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. That's going to create my base. And then I have this wood grain paper trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4. I'm going to go ahead and place that on top, leaving just a little border of that copper. Then off to the side, I've got one of the frames and a few pieces of ephemera. Also a couple leaves that I've cut out, and then I did place together one of the roses from the die cuts. I didn't include that, it was pretty simple. You just do the 2 different cutouts and then layer them directly on top of one another. So once I've got that laid out, I'm going to glue everything together. Now, I didn't realize it at the time, but the yellow backing on these frames is actually, they're stickers. So you can actually peel that away, and then the entire back of that would be sticky. So I'll know that for the next one that I use, but here I didn't realize that. So I'm adding in some of these leaves, getting everything lined up where I want it to be, and then placing that down with some art glitter glue. Next, I'll grab this ephemera piece, add some glue behind there. and then place down my frame. I'm going to use some pop dots here behind the rows. That way I can keep everything nice and even. Then finally here I decided I wanted to add one more sprig of those leaves, so I'm going to add some glue behind there, and I'll place that down and then trim off the excess. So for the inside, I went with the sentiment Happy Anniversary, and I've used these stickers left over from one of the previous card kits. I've been using these a lot lately, and I still have a ton left. So I just trimmed off a little bit there from this Nina panel. I had originally put these stickers directly on the inside of the card base, but they were too difficult to read like that. So I carefully peeled them up. They do have sort of a little bit of black fuzz around them, but I placed them down on top of this Nina panel instead, added some of the double-sided tape behind that, and I'm going to place that here on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 3. So here for card number 4, I've gone ahead and created my layout with some of my die cut leaves and the ephemera pieces, and I'm very carefully lifting those up and adding some glue underneath to try and keep everything in the same place that I want it in. I am just adding a little bit of glue behind those leaves. I want them to sort of pop up and give a little bit of texture to the card. I've added some glue here behind the bumblebee piece, but only towards the inside of that circle, and here I'm going to add some foam dots, so that'll sort of be half popped up, half glued flat down. And then I'm also going to pop up this ticket, so that will actually run a little bit over top of the half of that bumblebee piece that is flat down on top of the card. This way I've got some dimension, but not too much dimension. For my background panel, that is again from the 6x6 pattern paper, and I've trimmed that to 4x5 1/4. And of course the black background is trimmed to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm going to add some of the double-sided tape behind this panel and place that down on top of the black cardstock. Then I'll add some glue to the top of my card base and go ahead and place my panel down. For the inside, I'm on a Nina panel trimmed to 4x5 1/4, and I'm going to stamp out the sentiment, "Sometimes the smallest things take the most room in your heart," again using my Onyx Black ink. And then I've got a piece of this pink scrap, and I think this is paper tray ink. I'm pretty sure it's Sweet Blush. It's a very, very light pink, and it matches that ticket almost perfectly. So I've trimmed that out to about 1/4 inch, and I'm going to place that here along the bottom of my panel. I'll add some tape behind that and place that on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 4. So here for card number 5, I'm going to do another cluster of this ephemera. I've grabbed 3 different size circles and gone ahead and glued those down directly on this pattern paper. This is a really beautiful sort of smoky sunset or sunrise view, and I've trimmed that of course to 4 by 5 1/4. I'm placing that on top of a gray panel of the cardstock trimmed to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Here I'm going to add some of those foam dots behind this home sentiment. Peel away that backing and I'll place that down. And then for the butterfly, I wanted to have these wings popped up. So what I'm doing is taking my bone folder and I'm going to run 2 score lines, one on either side of the butterfly's body, and then I'll go ahead and fold up the wings. So that's going to give me a nice, fairly large piece in the center there that I can add some glue to get that stuck down on top of the card base. I've again added some glue to the top of my card base and I'll place my panel down. Then here for the inside, I've grabbed another one of those sentiments from the ephemera pack. This one reads "Beauty Surrounds Us." And I've added some of that double-sided tape behind there. I'll peel away the backing and then place that directly on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 5. Here are a few close-ups of the finished cards. In the description box below, you'll find my blog post, which has additional photos and links to the supplies I used. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a comment or a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.